On the show today, we have guest Patty McGee. Patty is a national recognized literacy consultant, speaker, and educator with a passion for transforming classrooms into spaces where language and learning come alive. With decades of experience as a teacher, coach, and advocate for delightful literacy practices, Patty has worked alongside educators across the country, partnering to unlock the full potential of their students through innovative and practical teaching strategies. Not Your Granny's Grammar is her third book. Connect with Patty at www.pattymcgee.org. Get ready for a great episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-created curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Patty McGee, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I am really excited. And so one of the questions that I've been opening episodes with is just like, what's on your mind today, or what should we keep in mind, as an audience? And what's on my mind is your book, Not Your Granny's Grammar, which is excellent. And we were just talking about this, but it is truly transformational and not at all your granny's grammar. So I'm really excited to talk about your book today. Anything on your mind that you want people to be thoughtful about or you want to share with folks?
Oh gosh. I'm very happy that my book is on your mind, and I am thinking even more about the possibilities of grammar in other areas and how we can reframe the way we think about it and the way that people approach it. And it's something definitely on my mind.
Well, it comes through powerfully in the book, and we'll get to all of that. The first question, though, I want to kind of zoom out and think about, Dr. Bettina Love talks about the idea of freedom dreaming by saying their dreams grounded in the critique of injustice, which is such a great way to think of it. And I'm wondering, what is that big dream that you hold for education?
Yes. My dream, I'm sorry, I've got so many and I'm trying to prioritize. It's really, I want it to be a place that students find themselves and become who they're meant to be by following their passions, by being loved to pieces and valued for all that they are. That's in a nutshell.
I love that. And as I was reading your work, I thought about Dr. Asao Anoy's work, who is also on the podcast, and he talks about, like writing specifically as a writing professor, right? Writing is often this way that, kids are able to express their very unique voices and feel valued. Particularly, his talk was around, assessment of writing and stuff. And so thinking about how we do that in a way that's affirming of students.
Yes.
But like, how powerful writing as an avenue for kind of identity exploration and voice is, and being able to like love someone to pieces as a student. I'm thinking about all of my students who I felt even more connected with once I read their writing and forms of expression, and that grammar oftentimes can be such, the way that we typically think of it can be such a hindrance to that voice and that expression and that love. And I'm just curious, is there kind of like a mindset shift that you think, teachers, anyone who's interfacing with grammar and young people, we need to used to think this, now we really need to shift over to this, and that's going to unlock a lot of potential. Is there anything you would advise around that?
There are multiple things. I will again try to prioritize. I think one of the biggest shifts is going to be around what grammar is for. Grammar is for expression. Grammar is meant to create meaning on the page. Grammar is not a static set of rules. And when we think of grammar in three buckets, where we have spoken grammar, book grammar and standard grammar, I think we start to look at grammar not as a superior goal of, let's say, the language that makes us sound intelligent, but rather one form of code switching, basically. So, like spoken grammar changes wherever you live, whatever culture is yours. That is spoken grammar, and it is just as valuable as book grammar and as standard grammar. And I just think of standard grammar as the grammar standards that we are charged with teaching. And it's constantly changing. So knowing that spoken grammar and book grammar are having an influence on grammar, standard grammar. So having that type of shift of like grammar as style, as making meaning on the page, I often equate grammar to a painter's paintbrush, the way that a painter is expressing themselves in their art and how they use different brush strokes to create what they're envisioning. And grammar is the same type of tool for writers. And it can really be something that empowers voices. Like you were saying, we discover more about our students when we read their writing. I also think a mind shift that is necessary is that we move from this immediacy of expectations. Like often we have the expectation that, okay, we did this worksheet. Now we're all supposed to know it and use it. And so if you wouldn't mind, I have a great quote from Jeff Anderson that I'd love to read. He says, "What about experimentation, play, approximation? Grammar and mechanics shape meaning. And as in all language endeavors, we must make mistakes to move toward correctness. Where's the bridge between getting started and stretching with grammar and mechanics and being wrong?"
That's so good. Yes. Oh my gosh. I love the artistry that I mean, I see and have read the language of the artists throughout your book as well.
Mhm.
And I love this analogy because I think a lot of times we think about art as fine arts, painting, drawing, whatever, and we don't always include writing in that. And I
Mhm.
mean, maybe we include poetry. We don't usually include much more than that, if that at all. And it's so beautiful that this is just distinctly including
Yeah.
all of the writing in the art world. And so I love that. I'm curious if we can talk a bit about your book. First off, the research at the front that traditional grammar instruction doesn't help and could actually harm. Could you tell us just a little bit about that? Because that was news to me that I found interesting.
Yes. So I'm actually going to go to that part because there's so much research there. Um, it's decades deep how much traditional grammar instruction, A, doesn't work, and B, can actually have the reverse effects that it's intended for. Uh, I go through so many different research studies, like just a meta analysis on grammar instruction, where they quoted, "If schools insist upon teaching the identification of parts of speech, the parsing or diagramming of sentences, or other concepts of traditional grammar, as many still do, they cannot defend it as a means of improving the quality of writing." That comes from Hillocks and Smith. I mean, it can't be more straightforward than that, but just the majority of research that I shared here is really backing up that same statement. But then there's hope in Graham's research around the way that we can teach grammar. And the three most effective ways of teaching grammar is sentence construction, sentence expansion, and sentence combining. Because the sentence is the building block of all writing, and it's the container of all parts of speech.
Absolutely. And I would love to dive into some pieces of your book and how you talk about like going after that, kind of pursuing what that research finding said. One of the most fantastic things I love is a good arc, and I love your kind of arc of your grammar study unit. I just thought, I mean, even as I mean, I taught literacy and social studies, and I was like, oh, you could do this in social studies too. I imagine you could do an element of this in math or science as well. Like, it's so beautifully constructed around inquiry and student learning. And, anyways, I'm talking enough. Can you talk us
Yeah,
through
so
kind
good.
of the arc of your units?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, the concept of teaching grammar in units, I think, is rather unique. That we often in the past have done, okay, we're going to identify nouns, and then we're going to identify verbs, and then we go on to some other isolated type of experience. But the arc of a unit of study in grammar follows Patty's research on how people learn. That we learn first through surface learning, then deep learning, and then transfer. And that's how we've set up the units. At least the chapter 3 is a full-on unit, day by day, that we really want to suggest we follow very closely. But then the other chapters are using the same blueprint of the unit, and then it's kind of choose your own adventure. So we start off with this surface learning. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to share a metaphor that I often refer to talk about these phases of learning. So a number of years ago, my mother-in-law, who is from Ireland, she came over when she was 20, and she decided it was no longer her job to be cooking Thanksgiving dinner. And she told us as much, and she was right. There's no Thanksgiving in Ireland. So what we did was we decided we would take over, and we were going to fry a turkey, which is something my neck of the woods. It was like all the rage at the time. So our surface learning was looking at videos of how to do it, getting the materials, looking at what not to do, how to avoid some of the more difficult parts of it. We tried it out, but with water instead of oil. We just did all of this naturally for ourselves. And then it turned to deep learning, where we fried a turkey and it was good. We fried a turkey again and it was even better. And then the third time, we're like, we're pro at this. Let's try some other meats and some vegetables, perhaps. And that was our transfer time. So it's something that we naturally do. And that's the same way we set up the unit for grammar, was that we really harness that surface learning through immersion experiences. And then we have different areas of focus that we get deeper and deeper with, just like our turkey. And then it sets up for transfer. And there's time to create things that will bring to when we're writing, whether it's in different writing types or different content areas. And then the transfer just continues and spirals through.
I love the structure so much, especially how you break it down. And I love that there's a structured unit as well as in the book that choose your own adventure style, which I think is very freeing for a lot of teachers who like that autonomy to be creative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also love that you included a bunch of kind of I would call them like teacher tips throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, one of them, I'll just share a couple of the ones that I like to maybe you
Okay.
could expand upon them. I love
Sure.
the tip to have students be in pairs potentially for the whole year as opposed to constantly mixing. Love
Mm-hmm.
that. Just the advice to not talk a lot and maybe just ask a question instead when students are grappling and learning. The pacing, like just the idea of constructing within a unit, of grammar study, but also to build reflection in as a valuable lesson or lessons within the unit. I don't know if you want to expand on any of those, but I just really liked those a lot.
Yes, I'll be happy to expand on any and all of them. Um, Having partnerships and long-term partnerships, which preferably would be at least one unit, if not the entire year, is an opportunity, number one, for grammar out loud, because standard grammar isn't something that we're used to hearing. And so when we are speaking and practicing and playing with, say, building compound sentences, we're not only seeing it, but we're also hearing it. And then in partnerships, we're co-building this grammar know-how. If we're talking to somebody new every day, we're not building off of the conversations we've had before. And so therefore, long-term partnerships are extremely helpful for grammar learning. What were the other two that you just mentioned?
One was teachers not talking, maybe posing a question instead.
Yes. So I have found, and I'm guilty of this myself, that sometimes we as educators feel compelled to talk a lot, and also to do so with a very strict, maybe inflexible set of slides that we adhere to, and therefore are not as responsive to what students are showing us that they need. And because this approach is so inquiry based, there's a greater chance of students learning if we pose a challenge or a question. So let's say students are using a grammar manipulative where they're creating compound sentences and they didn't accurately do so. Maybe they left out a comma. I might say instead, that's almost a compound sentence. See if you can find what you're missing. And usually the other partner's like, I told you you needed a comma, always something in that kind of way. But if we are doing all of the talking, it takes away from the experiences that we want kids to have with grammar. And we recommend in the book that it's 10 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. And so instead of thinking about them as lessons, thinking about them as grammar experiences that kids are having, if we can't fit into that 10 minutes, we should maybe reflect on how much of the talking we're doing during those 10-minute pockets.
That's a really good cue for teacher reflection. And then actually, that's a good segue into the third thing was building in reflection as a grammar experience.
I don't know, this whole book, I have favorites, but one of my favorites is this reflection that we pause and ponder, is what I call it. And the things that come out of students' mouths is just pure gold. Like a fourth grade classroom, after they had learned about simple and compound sentences and independent clauses, they were like, can you have more than 2 independent clauses in a compound sentence? And that's accessing what's usually a 7th grade standard. But they're curious about it. They're wondering. Another that comes up is often, I really want to use the word because. It would make more sense in some of these sentences I've been creating. How do I do that? And that leads us right into complex sentences. And just creating space for curiosity in those reflections of solidifying what we know just by pausing. And I often say that reflection is the stickiest glue for the brain. And so we're kind of like solidifying that and then using that as a springboard to think, what do I want to know more about? I think it's something very unique in grammar.
I love that. Like all of the pieces of that are so powerful, and often I think reflection gets skipped the quickest when we're stressed for time, pacing calendars are full.
Yeah.
And then it's, oh, well, that's not direct instruction, or, I guess not just a reflection, but all the other parts that are not direct instruction are the things that get cut. And the whole thing together is what makes the journey effective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm wondering if there are maybe one or two big challenges that you've seen teachers encounter as they try to shift away from traditional grammar and to do something like this, and how you might, coach someone through that challenge.
Yes. So I have done a boatload of anecdotal research around what are the biggest challenges for educators. Um, and it is the educator's knowledge and comfort with grammar in general. I was with a group of teachers this week, and we were working on a unit, and we got to complex sentences, and we had to pause, and they were so open, which is really helpful. And they're like, I don't remember these rules. I didn't know there were two forms of complex sentences. And just to refer to the book, you can find answers to your questions about grammar in lots of places on the internet, lots of handbooks and things like that. But in the back of our book, my co-author, Tim Donahue, just took his like brilliant grammar brain and gave us a whole tutorial in language that's accessible to understand grammatical concepts that we don't, that are very commonly misunderstood. And he even has in here, I just love this like concept that he came up with and how he executed it. He created videos of him teaching these grammatical concepts. And he set up in his basement a dry erase board, and his kids, he has three sons between the ages of fourth grade and eighth grade, and they helped record them. So the type of conversations that go on in the Donahue home, like he told me that one of his kids came home and said, do you know that so-and-so used a semicolon today? So like what he created back there is just so accessible that he has a fourth grader commenting on semicolons. It's that good. And that's also just how we partnered up. He has a way of explaining grammar that's like no other that we've ever seen. And that first came to light back about 10 years ago when he was a supervisor of humanities, and he was teaching us about grammar, and I was there to consult, and all of us in the room were like, whoa, we did not know that. And that is one of the hardest parts of teaching grammar, is we don't need to know it all, but that's something that's stopping us.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the free resource for this episode, Master Any Content Through the Power of Grammar. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/blog/270. Now back to the show.
Yeah, actually, I think that is a very common thing in any inquiry-based pedagogy is what do I do when I don't have an answer to the question the kid is asking me in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is, have those resources ready so you can consult even in the moment, perhaps in something as great as the resource that you have. That's probably easily findable. But even in a larger question, or if you don't have, the book with you, what do you think is a good response for a teacher in that moment if you don't have the answer ready?
I think it is, I don't know. Let's find out together.
I love that. And then come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I love it. Cool. I am really excited to just know that this book is out in the world and that people are going to implement it and that kids might actually love grammar now, which is super
Yes.
cool. I'm curious to know one thing, if people are ordering the book and it's on the way, like what's something that they could do? They just listened to the episode today. They're going to walk into their classrooms. Is there anything they could do right away? That's like a one quick implementable start to practicing grammar in this new way. That's not like we're going to outline a whole unit of study that we're going to start later.
Yes. I think the most impactful, easy things that teachers can do is to think of grammar manipulatives. that is one of my favorite parts of the book, as well as in partnerships. Let's say, very simply, do some sentences in a sentence, or sentences from a sentence, where we take a sentence or two that we really like. We open up a doc and copy it onto that doc. We then enlarge the font, cut out each word, and in partnerships, just make sentences together. It's super simple. There's very little prep to that. Kids can help cut, or you can cut, but you only need one collection per pair or trio. And I think starting with something as simple as that can be very, very useful. I also have a blog post on my website. There's a lot of resources, but I believe it's also through NCTE. And it is a series of just starting with compound sentences, getting your feet wet day by day, 4 or 5 days of grammar experiences. So that's also an easy to get resource.
That's incredible. Thank you for having that available for people. And I love just the idea of grammar manipulatives. I had to reread
Yes.
that like 4 times because I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, got it. Like so accessible, but I never associate the term manipulatives with English. I'm always like, oh, that's a math thing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just love it too. And I'm so jazzed by it that I keep creating more of them. Like when they come to me, I create them, but then I also see kids creating their own versions of manipulatives. Like it's just amazing to see. Like there was a second grade I was in, demoing, some grammar experiences, and they created like a kit on how to create compound sentences with directions, unifix cubes. Like it was like, what on earth is happening here? It was so amazing. So yeah, the whole concept, I think kids really take off with. And they're all so simple. We don't need bling. We don't need fancy things. We just cut through the complexity of it all. And the simplicity is really where that power is found.
I love that point because what really drew me to what you were saying at first was find a sentence that you like. And this
Mhm,
idea that reading is connected to writing, is connected to
mhm.
grammar, understanding, and learning is just so beautiful that I can read whatever I need to read out in the world for school and find something I love and then dig into that or play with that. Like that's fun as opposed to I'm doing a worksheet.
Oh
So,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Okay, to close us out, this question is purely for fun, although it can relate to your work as well. What is
Okay.
something that you have been learning about lately?
Oh, I have been learning. It's so funny. I've done a deep dive into circus history. I just have a curiosity about it, and I guess that's an apropos word to be using when it comes to the circus. Um, I started to create a text set for a school for us to experience um, tech sets and what they can do for us. And I was like, I think I might go in that direction. And I haven't stopped. I mean, we have a tech set that I use, but I'm still curious about it. It's just so fascinating and so many dimensions to it, like of things that are so wrong that we realize today, but then also like the space of inclusion for people who didn't find it in the world. It's fascinating.
Wow, that feels very fascinating and nuanced. I'm interested. Thank you for sharing that. The last
Sure.
question is really just where can people connect with you, learn more about you, get your book?
So you can go to my website, which is pattymcgee.org. Make sure you spell Patty with a Y, because Patty with an I is a skateboarder and I can't do that. Um, and on there, you'll find lots and lots and lots of curated, created resources, downloadables. And I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Patty, thank you so much for this conversation and for putting your book out in the world.
Oh my gosh, it's a complete honor to be here with you and talk with you. It's just a professional dream. So thank you.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book Street Data. And they say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no-strings-attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.